Good morning. We are continuing with those percentages, remembering our magic number of 100. Today we are computing percentages of whole numbers. So, time for real life applications using percentages, because we really truly do use this in our regular life. It's not just, oh, that's for math class. We do figure out percents on the normal. As you get older, you will be doing these things. So, why is this not working? I'm going to have to scroll up from over here. So, let's say she took 10 shots and made 30% of them. How many shots did she make? So how many shots is she making? So we need to know how to figure that out. Or his allowance for the month is $50 and he spent 40% of it. How much did he spend? The test was worth 40 points and she got a 90%. How many did she get correct? For the bill at the restaurant was about $60 and I left a 20% tip. How much was the tip? These are all things that does come up, especially the tipping one. You go to a restaurant, sometimes they'll have it automatically. Oh, you want to tip 10%, you want to tip 15%, you want to tip 20%. Sometimes they don't have that feature. You need to figure out what the tip is going to be. So we need to know how to do that. So we're going to answer the questions above using percentages. So if we look at the shots, we know, let's see if it's calibrated. Oh no, this isn't working at all. Okay, because technology is apparently not my friend this week, we are going to do this with the document camera then. So my apologies. Ay. Let's do this. So, let's see if the pen will work with the document camera. No, the pen's not working at all. Beautiful. So, for our shots, let me get a blank copy. This will be easier if I use a blank copy, because there's a lot of writing we're going to do for these. So let's do it this way. All right. We know that she made 30% of her shots. So 30% would be what fraction? Adeline? 30 over 100. So we want to know how many shots she took out of 10. So we had 10 shots and she made 30%. So we don't know how many shots out of 10 she actually made, but we know that it equals 30%. So we're going to use those fractions. Then we need to solve for our n. Have we done opposite operations in here? Okay, I didn't think so. All right, so what we want to do to get the n by itself, instead of dividing by 10, we're going to multiply by 10. on both sides. So those are going to cancel out. Multiplying by 10, dividing by 10, they are opposite operations. So then we have 30 times 10, which is 300 over 100, right? Are you with me there? 30 times 10 is 300. That 100 stays the same. We can simplify it by dividing out that 100. What whole number is 3 over 1, James? 3 over 1. What would we call that? Nolan? It is improper. Let's make it proper. How many times can we take 1 out of 3? Maddie? 3. So we know that n equals 3, because 3 over 1 is the same as saying 3. So we can say that if she took 10 shots, she made 30%. How many is that? She made 3 shots out of those 10. So she made 3 shots. Another way of saying this is 30% of 10 equals what? So 30%, if we put it as a decimal, is 0.3. Of that operation is multiply. So 0.30 times 10. If we multiply those two together, use your calculator, what do we get? What is 0.3 times 10, Lila? 3. So we get that same number. So we know that she made 3 shots. Let's look at the allowance. He spent 40% of his allowance. 40% is the same as 40 over 100. We want to know how much he spent of that $50. So we want to know how much of the $50 he spent. And that 40% is 40 over 100. So to get that n by itself, what are we going to multiply it by? Sarah? So look at what we're dividing the n by. What should we multiply it by? Oh, look at this number. What number is that? 50. So because we're dividing it by 50, now we want to multiply both sides by 50. Because if we're dividing and multiplying, they cancel out. They're opposite operations. But we're going to do the same thing to this side. What is 40 times 50? Emma? Say it louder. Not 900. We're multiplying. No, multiplying. You're adding. Multiplying, James. 4 times 5 is that 20. And then we have 2 zeros we're going to put on. So the 4 times 5 is 20. Plus our 2 zeros over 100. We can cancel out those zeros. What number are we left with? Adeline? No. Look up here. We canceled out those zeros. 20. So we know n equals 20. He spent $20. The other way of looking at it is that 40% of 50 equals what? 40% is 0.40. Of means multiply. So 0.4 times 50. If you use your calculator, what are you going to get? 0.4 times 50. Adeline? Did you use your calculator? Use your calculator. Bennett? 20. If we use our calculator and we put in 0.40 times 50, we get 20. So we know that he spent $20. Let's do the test. Test was worth 40 points and she got 90% on the test. How many right is that? So we want to know how many out of 90 points did she get? 90 equals, well, that we know that 90%, nope, sorry, test is worth 40 points. I'm confusing my numbers. Test is worth 40 points. The 90% we know is that 90 over 100. So n over 40 equals that 90 over 100, right? Because we want to know how many points out of 40 equals 90%, equals 90 over 100. What am I going to multiply both sides by? Bridget? 40, because I'm dividing by 40 here. So I'm going to multiply by 40. Multiplying and dividing by the same number cancels each other out. What is 90 times 40? So the quickest, easiest way to do it is what is 9 times 4? What's 9 times 4, Maddie? Did you know it? Lila, help her out. 9 times 4 is that 36, and then we have 2 zeros, so I'm going to put 2 zeros after it, over 100. Cancel out my zeros. How many points did she get on the test? Aiden? 36. I can do it using the other way. I can say 90% of 40 equals what? So 90% is 0.90, of is multiply 40. So I multiply 0.9 times 40, and I get that same 36. Bridget? That is a great question. If I remember correctly, we do not use the calculator, so we want to know how to do the fraction form. We're doing this form so we can check it on our homework, okay? But we want to know and understand the fraction form on the homework so we can do that on the test. So that was a great question. Did you have a question, Natalie? Oh, I thought I saw your hand go up, sorry. Okay, so we're doing this form to check it, but I want to make sure you understand how to do it, so we're doing the fraction form. So, who can set up the tip fractions for me? How am I going to solve that using the fractions? James is the only one that's going to take a chance. Anybody else want to take a chance? Lila, take a chance with me. So the tip was 20% tip out of $60. So how much money of the $60? So we don't want to do the 20%. We want to do the $60 because it's how much of that $60 did we tip. So we would want to put that 60 on the bottom, and that equals that 20%. So n over 60 equals that 20 over 100. So instead of putting the percent underneath, we put that whole number. So it was $60. What's my next step going to be? Do you think you know, Lila? Yeah, I multiply both sides by that 60. Because this is dividing by 60, so I multiply by 60 so it cancels out. And then I have to do the same thing to the other side, multiply by that 60. What is 20 times 60? I don't need a calculator for it. Nolan?
1,200.
Yeah, because I know 2 times 6 is 12, and then I add on my 2 zeros over that 100. How do I simplify that? Maddie? Yeah, I divide out those zeros from each other. So how much is our tip on $60, Liam? $12. So just take it step by step, and we don't need the calculator, right? Put it as the fraction. How much out of what the whole number equals your percent as a fraction. We're going to multiply, so we cancel out that whole number, multiply the other side by the whole number. So look at it this way, 2 times 6, and then add on those 2 zeros over 100. You cancel out your zeros, and you're left with your answer. We can check our work to make sure we did it right by doing this set. So we had 20% of 60. So that's 0.20 times 60, and we will get that same answer of $12. Adeline. Which number to put on the bottom? It's going to be the whole amount. So here we put a 60 on the bottom because it was out of $60. So whatever that whole amount is. So when we look up at the top, she took 10 shots. He got $50 for allowance, 40 points on the test, $60 for your bill. We want to know how much out of that. So that whole number is always going to be the bottom number. And then that's the number that we multiply by, so it can be left with just the end. So whatever that whole number is on the bottom, that's the number that we multiply both sides by. So you have to find the whole number, not the percent. The whole number goes on the bottom. It equals that percent as a fraction. Is that making sense to people? I see some people nodding. Yep, I get it. I see some people kind of with a glazed over look. How are we doing? Is it making sense? So you just break it down step by step. First step is you make your fraction. What we want to know, that n over the whole number. That equals the percent as a fraction. Second step is we multiply by the whole number. So on the first fraction, it cancels out. Second fraction, we multiply across. Take the zeros off and just do 2 times 6. We don't need a calculator for that. Then you put the zeros on after it, over 100, so we can cancel out those zeros, so we're left with our answer. Let's look at the bottom. Using percentages, find the following values. Show your work. So if I do 20% of 40, what's my whole number that I'm going to put on the bottom, James? 40. So I would do how much out of 40 equals 20%. What fraction do I put for 20%? Adeline? 20 over 100. So what am I going to multiply both sides by, Helen? 40. My 40s cancel out. Multiplying and dividing by the same number cancels out. What is 20 times 40? Emma? 800. Because I have 2 times 4 is 8. I add my 2 zeros on. So 800 over 100. What's my next step? Kellen? Yeah, simplify it down. Dividing out that 100, and what am I left with? Adeline? 8. So 20% of 40 is going to be 8. You can check it on your calculator. 20% is 0.2 times 40 equals 8. So double check your work. Not only do the fractions, but do the calculator part to make sure you're doing it correctly. Ida, walk me through this middle one. What should I write for my fractions? What does that equal? That is 70%, but what's the first part? Because I want to find what is 70% of 60. So remember, we want to do that n over 60 equals 70 over 100. So what's the next step? Multiply what? By what? What's my bottom number? By that 60, by that bottom number. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 60. What is 70 times 60? What's 7 times 6? 7 times 6 is 42. And then I have 2 zeros, so I'm going to put those 2 zeros. That's over 100. Simplify out that 100. What is 70% of 60? 42. Did you see how we did that? Then you can check it with your calculator. 70% is 0.70 times 60, and you'll get that same answer of 42. Work on this last one. Everybody work on that now. Write out your fractions. Figure out what you're multiplying both sides by. Then simplify it down. I'm going to give us a minute to work it out so we can see if we're doing right. Now I'm going to randomly call on somebody to walk me through the steps that they did. Whether you get it right or not is okay, because we learn from our mistakes. So I want everybody to work this out, this last problem, work it out on your paper. There's just a couple of us finishing up. Let's see, whose voice have I not heard lately? Aaron, walk me through how you solved this. Can you talk a little bit louder with the fan blowing right above me? Okay. Did you do it as a decimal or as a fraction? Okay, so you did 90 and you turned it into 0.9?
No, I turned it into
90 over 100? So you made it a fraction. Okay, so we have 90 over 100.
And then times 90
Why by 80?
because
Because that's that whole number, right? Because we had n over 80, so we're going to times both sides by that 80. What did you get for 90 times 80? 7,200. And then what did you do? Yeah, you divided out 100. So what were you left with, Aaron? 72. Perfect. So if we did it with the calculator, we would do 0.90 times 80, and we would get that same 72. How are we feeling about this? Okay, for these ones, it was a little bit easier because it was just the numbers. If we look at our second page, at the top, we have just the numbers again. Exactly what we just did. You all did and found that 72. So you're doing the same math up here, but then down here we have word problems. Remember, we're not going to be scared by the words. We're going to look for that whole number. We're going to look for the percentage. We're going to read the question and make sure we're answering the question. There might be multiple steps. So if we look at the first one, it says, after a nice evening out with your family, you offer to pay the bill for dinner. The bill is $60. How much would a 20% tip be? What's my whole number that I'm using, Emma? Yeah, that whole number and over the whole number, that's going to be 60. My percent is what? James? And what is it for this problem? Yeah, we've got a 20% tip, so that's our fraction. So we find our whole number, we find our fraction out of that percent. So it would be n over $60 equals 20 over 100. And then you're going to do that same math that we've been doing. Okay? So don't be scared by the words. Find that whole number, find the percent to turn into a fraction, do the same math. But then sometimes we'll have different questions. Who made the most shots? Who made the least? So in this one, you're finding, you're doing this math for Billy McBillet, Bobby McBobbit, Shovin Colts. You're finding out how many shots they all make. So you're doing that for each of those players. And then you're telling me who made the least and who made the most. It's nothing new. It's the same math we've been doing. We just have to take it a step further to answer the questions. So make sure you're doing the correct math and you're answering the question that's being asked. Any questions on this math? James?
Should we write on the second problem should we write the middle of the...
It's just asking who made the most and who made the least. So you're going to say most is this person, least is this person. But you have to do the math for all three of them to know. Okay? Any other questions? All right, let's quietly get to work. When you are finished with this objective, if you get done before class is done, you're working on practice works because tomorrow is a retake day. So work on your practice works, turn it into the blue tray so I can get it corrected. Okay, so practice works to get ready for retakes. Tomorrow's that retake day, so if you are at home, you are also working on your practice works so we can get those retakes done. Remember, packet number 5 is due on December 17th, so be working on that packet number 5 also. If you are watching at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.